Davis.
Thank you, Mr Chair. Look, I'd just like to go back to the apology, and my colleague Nanaia Mahuta has, I believe, an excellent SOP. And I think we need to make it really clear that an apology, we're not putting it on the government of today to say that they must apologise. I don't think that's what we're not saying that. What we're saying is that this House and all of us in it, representing the various parties and representing the history of those various parties, need to put that apology across to Te Reo Māori whānui, the wide Māori in general. We're not, this isn't about whipping today's government. This is about this House acknowledging the damage that has been caused to us as a people over many, many decades and putting it right. And then, as Nanaia so eloquently said, moving on. That's what it's doing. We just want to put this behind us. And I believe, as Adrian Rurafe has said, that everybody who has been denied the ability to speak Te Reo Māori deserves that apology. So it's not about saying the national government or the Māori Party or whatever needs to put in this apology. We need to do it together. And again, Nanaia Mahuta said that all of us, every party needs to agree to it, and I believe that it's just an act of healing and letting us move on, because we do want to move on, Mr Chair. I also acknowledge what John O'Neill said when he referred to clause 323, which says, affirm the status of the Māori language as a language valued by the nation. And I agree with him when he said he doesn't think that the language really is valued by the nation as a whole. Clause 2A2 says, affirm the status of the Māori language as a taonga of iwi and Māori. Now, actually, I'd like to think that we say it is a taonga of iwi and Māori and the whole nation. It goes on to say a language valued by the nation, but I think that Te Reo Māori is a taonga of the whole nation as well as iwi and Māori, in that Te Reo Māori, as we know, is only spoken in New Zealand. It's indigenous to this country, and it should be acknowledged as a taonga for the whole country. But then also I believe that Māori, in order for our reo to survive, we actually have to let go of some of the, I don't know how to say it without it sounding bad, but some of the control. We cannot on our own anymore save Te Reo. We need the whole country to be there with us. So when I walk into the community and I want to speak Te Reo Māori or conduct my business, my daily business in Te Reo Māori, and I walk into a shop and I'd love to be able to have a conversation with the person behind the counter, I can't say, oh no, that person's not Māori, so there's no point trying. I would love to be able to have the conversation with that person, and that is the way that Te Reo Māori is going to thrive and flourish, is if whole communities speak Te Reo Māori. I remember a person, quite a well-known Māori, saying, oh look, I don't want Pākehās to learn Te Reo. If they do, I don't want them to know what I'm saying when they walk into a room, or I walk into a room. And I just thought, this was about 15 years ago, I thought that is just the most stupid, ignorant idea ever. I would love to be able to conduct this debate entirely in Te Reo, and just like Adrian Rurafe said, he doesn't have the capability to conduct the debate entirely in Te Reo. I'm the same. Probably the best person would be Pire Henare, and nothing to do with the calibre and the quality of his teacher in Form 2, I have to admit.
Who was it?
But wouldn't it be wonderful if every single one of us just stood up and fluently debated this in Te Reo Māori? Wouldn't that just be the most wonderful thing for New Zealand? And so I say to Māori that we actually need to start working more and more with non-Māori to ensure the survival, because we can't just rely anymore on traditional intergenerational transfer of te reo. That would just be wonderful if that happened, but it just isn't happening. We can't rely on traditional, Mr Chair.
Kelvin Davis.
We can't rely on traditional methods of language transmission anymore. We actually have to start looking at non-traditional methods of language transmission, and it will seem unnatural to us. We can still do a lot of things in a Māori context, but the traditional way was to speak Māori in the home, to speak Māori on the marae, and to sit down at the feet of your elders and to listen and to ask questions. In fact, it was Penny's grandmother. I remember asking her, my Auntie Betty, and I said, Aunt, pehea koe I ako ai te reo Māori? And she said, I said, how did you learn to speak Māori? And she said, I used to sit down and listen and then ask questions and say, well, what did you mean by this and what did you mean by that? So, but we can't really rely on those traditional methods anymore because we don't have the depth and the numbers of fluent speakers. So we have to start looking at non-traditional ways of doing things. I've mooted this idea before about having trivial pursuits in te reo, total immersion trivial pursuits nights on marae. Now that's not a traditional method of transfer, but it's using a Māori context to actually still be able to transfer the language. I've talked about newspapers having once a week, say, just having a whole page in Te Reo Māori. I've talked about having Māori writing clubs where we get people sitting on a marae writing their life story in Te Reo Māori, or even just writing fiction in Te Reo Māori and sharing it and putting it online. So we have to start finding ways that doesn't just rely on speaking and listening, but we need to use all the language modes, writing, reading, as well as speaking and listening. So we need to be creative in looking for new ways to transfer the language. Adrian Rudolph also said about this word that pops up all the time, revitalisation, revitalising Te Reo Māori. What does that mean? Because one person learning the language, we can say that, that's revitalisation. We need to actually have some goals and some targets so that we actually really do know how many more people, because of this bill, are able to speak Māori, and in improving also their fluency, as I've said earlier. We need to be able to measure that, and that to me will get some idea of revitalisation. We were having a bit of a wānanga, our Māori caucus in the Labour Party, and we said, look, what are the statistics saying? I think we came up with, since 2004, between 2004 and 2012, 3%, we've had a 3% drop in the numbers who are able to speak Māori. Now, at that rate, probably in the next 30 years, there'll be next to nobody who's able to speak Māori. We cannot have those levels of language speakers diminish over the course of time. So we need to be able to measure the problem, and it's not easy. Let's not make any mistake. It's not easy to measure those sorts of things, but we actually need to do it if we're to actually make any sort of improvement. We actually need to be able to increase the number of contexts out in the community where Te Reo Māori is spoken, in businesses, in shops, in post offices, in banks. We can't legislate for a bank or a business to hire Māori speakers, but we can create the conditions where it's easier for their staff to start picking up the language of their business and support them in ways like that. It's vital if we're to increase the numbers of speakers. The other word is support in this bill, to provide means to support and revitalise the Māori language. What does support really mean? It's going to actually cost money. That's one of the big issues. It's going to cost money to create the resources, to create the support in order to increase Te Reo Māori speakers. So we need to actually talk long and hard. What does support look like? What does revitalise actually mean? What are our targets over the next 3 years, next 6 years, 9 years? Because if we're just going to have this bill, okay, we're going to have a strategy. 2 strategies. Yep, I mean, I've heard strategies before. I'd really like to know the contents of what those strategies could be. I know it's not you know, we've got to leave it up to Te Mātua Wai to develop those strategies, but they really do need to be grunty strategies, Mr. Chair.
Marama Davidson.